Hello, welcome back. Today is January 16th, and we're doing government and securities stories to share with your friends.
Links with friends.
Definitely not stories about things happening in the world.
Oh, listen, last week was a little slow. This
week is not.
We're going to confess a little bit. We were doing an experiment last week. Last week we turned off the send thing to
Notifications.
People.
We turned off notifications.
To see if that works. Because sometimes it doesn't always work. And interestingly, okay, there were a lot of complaints. But a lot of people also reported that we showed up anyway in recommended, which is also a known thing. But it also altered the trajectory of engagement for the algorithm. So we're kind of gaming the algorithm a little bit.
We're trying to. I don't know that it's really accomplished much besides making people upset.
We'll see.
We did get a lot of comments, so.
Yeah, engagement challenge.
A lot of people were upset.
Thank you for engaging.
Yeah.
We appreciate the engagement. Some people are like, I don't want to listen to you ramble. It's like, that's fair enough.
Well, if they're here, they're probably here to listen to us ramble.
Well, there was a tweet that got a lot of engagement this week, but it turned out to be a false tweet, although only temporarily false tweet.
Yeah.
But it does point out that there's a gaping security concern, including no two-factor on a very special account.
The SEC says that it did not yet approve the Bitcoin ETF, and its X account, or Twitter account, was compromised. Briefly, that sent Bitcoin to the moon and then back down again.
I kind of feel like they probably had that, like, you can put like a post in drafts. I wonder if they had drafted it and then someone hit publish on it before they were supposed to.
Well,
Just absolute chaos.
Did I missort? Oh, no.
Oh, no, chat.
I may have just screwed that up. But they did eventually approve the Bitcoin ETF, so it was all for nothing. That's going to show up later somewhere, maybe.
To the moon!
It did not have the to the moon effect. I think Bitcoin's down today.
Yeah, it went down.
But that's probably not because of that. It's probably because of the inflation was not high enough to prevent the election year meddling to start cutting rates again. And here is a very, very rare positive-only story. Could you guys find any negatives here?
Nope.
We can bask in the glory maybe once per month of something like this.
The FTC bans Xmode, which is a company that's changed its name 4 or 5 times now, from selling phone location data and orders the firm to delete collected data.
The only downside I saw to this is like, why don't we do this with everybody?
There are definitely going to be other companies who step in, pick up the slack. Probably won't change anything.
But I'm glad that they did it. It's a step in the right direction.
Weirdly, the FTC has not banned the companies from collecting the data in the first place. And this article tiptoes around it, but depending on which libraries you use, certain applications may even be unwittingly collecting your location data. Like if you develop an app and you use a library from somewhere, that library could capture your location and then sell that. But the application that is using the library may be unaware that your location is being captured and forwarded to a third party.
So they mostly bought the location data and resold it in that, but they are an app developer. They do 2 apps that you would want to stay away from. That is Drunk Mode and Walk Against Humanity. Those are definitely selling your location data. And we have another government's funding crunch. How long will we keep the can going down the road by kicking it? It seems like forever, but some things get left by the wayside.
The Ars Technica headline is the FCC plans a shutdown of the Affordable Connectivity Program as the GOP withholds funding. Like this is where really poor people could get a rebate on their
There's like $30.
their internet service. But it's weird in those areas, the internet service is also like $30 more expensive than background. But some of these ISPs are so terrible, they're just like, well, I guess poor people won't have internet. Oh, well. And they just don't.
And the FCC has also, or at least one commissioner from the FCC, has been vocal about a fight that has kind of been left to languish, kind of since China has went into an economic black hole. Maybe they're not the threat they used to be, but some people are still carrying this flag.
FCC Commissioner Carr on India banning TikTok and other Chinese apps. They're basically saying,
Good job. Yeah.
But we're America. We should be doing this first. Like, if India's doing this, like, how bad is it?
So he says right at the beginning, I hope there's a nationwide ban. And geofencing or geo warrants, where, if you're not familiar with that, cops detect a crime and they say, wouldn't it be nice if we knew everybody who was at the crime scene? And they get a warrant to go to Google or whoever and get the location data and say, we're going to investigate all these people because they were near a crime. Sounds horrible, right? But it gets even worse because cops are bad.
A geofence warrant typo cast a location dragnet spanning 2 miles over San Francisco.
But everyone over that 2 miles criminals.
There's a lot of people in that 2 mile radius in San Francisco, don't you think?
So the EFF, I think it was Civil Liberties.
ACLU.
What was it? Oh yeah, ACLU. Yeah. They went through a ton of these warrants. They're doing God's work. Imagine how mind-numbing that had to be. And they found several. This was the worst of the things that they found, but they found several things that were really, really bad in terms of overreach and just investigating innocent people with impunity.
Yeah.
That has to be a waste of time for them, too. Like, can you imagine how angry you'd be if it's like, let me look at 200 people's data and none of them are who we need?
No, the sliding window of the trajectory that we're on with this is that your location data just goes directly into a police database so they can do select star from where location is blah to blah. That solves it. That makes it the headache less for everybody. But that's also really bad.
See, they're not looking at all those individually. They're searching through them and they're picking what they want, but they're allowed to do whatever they want. That's the issue with it. So the cops, this is the opposite of inconvenience for a cop. This is like ChatGPT for law enforcement, and it's just as wrong.
It also is worrying that in a lot of these cases, we have these 2 or 3 tiny shreds of evidence that may be coincidental or may be innocuous. Now you have to come up with your own evidence to prove the opposite of what we accuse you of. And it's a much more difficult proposition. It's like there might be an innocent explanation for which there is no evidence.
It's supposed to work the opposite of that. I've always been taught.
It's weird, yeah.
And the EU, we've been following the long saga of the EU versus Uber and Lyft and all those gig economy, DoorDash. They have really cracked down on them, saying that you have to give workers some kind of compensation. You can't treat them like contractors, blah, blah, blah. And now, Mr. Biden.
The Reuters headline is Biden administration to unveil contractor rule that could upend the gig economy. They're definitely targeting things like Uber, but I think they're also unwittingly targeting things like Amazon's Mechanical Turk, which has been in existence before Uber and before all of this.
Probably doesn't have the user base that Uber does. Yeah, I mean, it's true that these companies, they treat the workers as workers when they want to control their lives, and they treat them as contractors when they want to pay them. But nobody's advocating for, like, just don't let them control their lives. It seems like the corporation must control your life. And here's just a friendly reminder and a reminder about how awful tax software is and how deceptive and how you're being screwed if you pay for it.
The headline is Tax Season 2024, everything you need to know about Free File from a company that's not going to make any money and is not an advertisement. Like if you search for this on a search engine, I would like to learn more about free filing this tax season. You're not going to get anything worthwhile. Literally nothing.
Even finding it in the article is a bit of a pain because there's ads.
There you go. Here's some various places that will let you do this. Tax Slayer.
I think you have to be, what was it, below 70,000 a year
73,000
to qualify for free.
Which is the
weird.
median, right?
Yeah.
So only the poor can do that. And we've been seeing more and more of this. This is, again, there's not a lot of tangible things in here to actually point to like concrete details, but every week now we're getting this propaganda pushed out. So they're signaling something.
Apple faces an epochal moment with looming antitrust scrutiny.
I saw this headline and I was like, some editor's really proud of their vocab right now.
Wouldn't it be Apple faces epic moment with looming antitrust scrutiny? Wouldn't that be the popular vernacular?
Epoch would be like an age or an era.
Yeah.
So this would be the end of the age of Apple dominating like this. Like the age of Aquarius. We're going into the age of Aquarius. No one can agree when it actually is.
Because of the movement of stars.
Right.
Yeah, it's like, it turns out It's weird though, because Apple historically, but they've built an amazing monopoly for themselves by just having software that's not brain dead and that works in a consistent way, which is actually a lot of work.
Yeah, but they took that lead
And weaponized
and
it.
they
Yeah.
did bad things with it. So, you know what? I'm generally able to avoid Apple's badness by not having their products, but then more and more services require me to use Apple and Facebook, and it's really disgusting.
It's like, this doesn't work in Safari. That's because Safari's hot trash. I don't know what to tell you.
Safari's been hot trash for a long time.
Now, we learned a couple of weeks ago that the FBI, when they struck against one of the ransomware gangs, they did it poorly, and they didn't do enough, and the infection was not destroyed, and it came back stronger. And they were like, you know what, guys? Because you screwed with us, we're going after the hospitals again. And it's like, oh no! So now I guess the government is thinking, how are we going to get in front of this?
Uncle Sam tells hospitals, meet security standards or no federal dollars for you. This actually probably is needed because
Yeah. Is there a bad side to this story?
speaking from the inside of this, it's bad. It's real bad.
The bad side of this is that all of these costs will get passed along to sick people
Yeah.
and insurance premiums. That's the bad side, but that's probably a little bit better than everybody's information
Medical
being
info,
stolen.
yeah, just being all over the internet.
There are a lot of changes in the law with regard to disclosure and how doctors' offices are supposed to handle their technology. And so they're keen to outsource it. But a lot of the time when they outsource it to like a small, like a local town computer shop, that's just abdicating responsibility. The computer shop has no idea the rules that they have to comply with. And when inevitably the doctor's office is like, we don't want to spend any money to do this thing, something bad happens. The doctor's office does not get the blame.
All right, we got to time this perfectly. You ready?
Congress wants tech companies to pay up for AI training data. Somebody had better tell Congress that there is an awful lot of data in the public domain that can go into AI training data.
So this is similar to all the arguments we've been having about paying the news people. Like, oh, you got to pay the New York Times if you want to use their stuff. It's literally New York Times, one of the big players here. I don't know. I mean, we're taking information and we're just commoditizing it
Yeah.
and making it less and less available to everyone.
I do dislike, though, that a lot of these AIs, like, they're moving to that subscription model, so they are charging you for stuff that should be free, ultimately, right? I mean, they're making a profit off it.
But they are burning a ton of resources to give it to you. It makes sense they got to do something. I mean, like, the energy that they're consuming is extreme.
Right, but you're still taking from someone else to offer it.
If there does end up being some kind of a carve out for this, I would love for it to be that AI can use anything older than 20 years. Like, you could train, even though copyright is longer than 20 years, originally it wasn't. But how cool would it be? It's like, okay, you're going to transformationally use this in an AI. Anything older than 20 years is fair game.
Let's say Ron Wyden introduces that. How long until the Disney lawyers turn that into 75 years and then 175 years?
He would have a mysterious motorcycle accident before any of that ever happened.
He'd get Steamboat Willied.
Yeah.
You know what a truly people-oriented government would be saying to us? They'd be saying like, well, don't depend on these guys. Come up with your own AI solutions and run them yourself, and then you can manage your own power and you can control but of course,
No, it's going to be a monopoly, and then everyone has to pay that one company.
Yeah, a lot of you were engaging with comments just then, but for what Ryan is saying, take that thought a little bit farther. What if you have your own AI agent, and your instructions to the AI agent is, go read the New York Times for me and let me know about any stories that are relevant to my interests because you've trained it on that. It's running locally.
But OpenAI can fight that. You cannot. And the New York Times will destroy you. And Mr. Elon Musk is in court pretty much all the time, right? This one was a loss for him.
Supreme Court rejects an appeal by Elon Musk's ex on disclosing federal surveillance.
So the cops, the federal agents, they can come to social media and say, give us everything that you have about this account. And he has to give it to them. And so does Facebook and Instagram and everybody else.
And he's not necessarily allowed to disclose it.
Or it literally cannot. And he wanted to, and he said, hey, it's my free speech to tell people that you're investigating them. The Supreme Court said no.
Well, they just declined to hear it. But they didn't even say what judges declined it.
But they did. I think there was a quote in here. I don't know if it was from one of the justices. Really dystopian. It's like, well, we have to spy on people.
Can you imagine
We can't be expected not to spy on people.
Watergate playing out in the modern technology hellscape? I mean, just Watergate happening exactly as it did, but it's like, oh, we need a geofence warrant for everybody that was in that area. Oh, we need to look at everybody's social media. Oh, and it's just like.
So you think they would have total awareness of what happened in the White House? Do you think they could find a little baggie of cocaine? Who owned it?
Yeah. No question about it.
No, they can't find that.
Oh, right.
And those poor lawmakers, they're out there every day putting in tireless hours, working so hard to make our lives better. And what do we give them in return? Barely anything.
Retiring House Republican says that their salary of $174,000 isn't enough for members of Congress. Most of us don't have money.
I'm of two minds about this because part of it feels very like Marie Antoinette, extremely out of touch. But also, like, that's probably why so many of them are taking bribes. So it's like, I don't know.
Yeah. The alternative headline was, "Please give me more money, corporations."
I'm easily bought.
The article concedes it's like, well, they're going to have to buy an extra house in Washington, D.C.
Yeah, they have to keep a house in their constituency, right?
But that's an asset. They could sell that when they're done. So that's just a temporary thing. And
assuming they can buy one in the first place, though.
Also, keep in mind that whenever anybody's done any like hard math on the rate of return on bribing, it's like
Lobbying.
You only have to give them like 20 grand.
Yeah.
Well, this is why.
This is why. That's why I'm like, I don't know. I mean, yes, it sounds incredibly stupid and out of touch, but also
the federal poverty level, let's not forget, is about $19,000. So it's 9 times the federal poverty level is what Congress critters get paid. It'll be 10 times when they get a raise.
And the median is 70 something, so they're getting 6 figures above the median.
Yeah.
Now, they're not supposed to be celebrities. They're not supposed to be superheroes. They're supposed to be servants.
Public servant is literally
What other person with servant in their job title gets paid that much money?
it seems like maybe they should have maybe they do have this and I'm just ignorant. That's very, very possible. But surely they would have Congress critter housing so that way they don't have to buy an apartment or something nearby.
I don't know if they have that.
I know they have a cafeteria and a gym and all that.
Amazing health insurance.
Yeah.
What's that worth? They have a free hairdresser.
Oh, yeah.
They have all kinds of perks in Congress. I think the food is always free for them.
Yeah.
Right? So,
but I mean, they do need a place to stay. But again, that seems like that could just be held like an apartment.
We could just put some tents on the White House lawn.
Yeah.
That'd be nice.
Glamping.
And those people, they might not get paid a lot of money, but they are responsible for throwing away a lot of money because they have a lot of bad ideas that they don't think through. And then this happens.
Chicago Public Schools lost over $20 million in electronics in 1 year, report says.
I think it was 23 million.
And that's 23 million of garbage tier electronics, right?
Yeah.
What do those Chromebooks actually have a value of?
Sometimes classes have iPads and stuff too, though. Some of that stuff's expensive.
That can still be pretty low value, though. I mean, per unit.
Kids should not have any piece of electronics that will not survive a number of drops.
I don't think they're losing them to drops.
Yeah, I think some of it is likely, unfortunately, hawking it.
Yeah.
But they also pointed out in this article, though, that a lot of these devices didn't have the tracking stuff they're supposed to have on them. So if they show up at a pawn shop, someone
of course.
would know. But they just didn't install that.
It's fabulous.
I would not want a secondhand Chicago public school iPad.
It's got so many germs on it. So much snot.
And our poor lawmakers, of course, they are inundated with work. They don't have any time to get anything done because they're overworked, they're underpaid. But finally in Pennsylvania, they may have a little bit of help.
The somewhat salty Gizmodo headline is PennsylvaniaGPT is here to hallucinate over cheesesteaks. Someone a little salty there over cheesesteak? Is that what's going on?
They asked this GPT about what's the best place to get a cheesesteak in Philadelphia, and it gave an answer. And people were angry about it because apparently there's a very hot rivalry between a couple places.
Sure, that's always true. Now, this will not be making laws, we hope, They say it's going to be restricted to like summarizing things and doing most of their writing for them.
Asking questions.
Yeah, so I suspect we'll have a terrible story soon of someone who has not followed those rules and used it for something that they should not have. And one thing that we cover a lot here is this concept of the lives that you see on the gram and on Facebook. None of that's real. That's people
On YouTube.
Yeah, that's people who are pretending. Oh, do we seem glamorous?
I don't know what Grant's picked out for our background this week, but we don't actually live here, wherever it is.
But but it's genuine. We haven't faked any of it. And
Horrifically and unavoidably organic, not AI generated.
We are just as dysfunctional as we appear.
You cannot say that about this young lady.
Former U.S. Rep. Mayra Flores,
I think that's right.
accused of cribbing others' pictures of Mexican food as her own cooking. Oh, that's just sad.
It's not really even something to be mad about. It's just like, oh, that's kind of pathetic.
You know what else is wild about this is she is Republican, right? She's like
I'm not sure.
She's like a Mexican descent,
Yeah.
Anti-border open candidate, but her posts are about traditional Mexican foods and like her
heritage,
culture and
yeah.
everything. And I'm not saying that. I mean, if you are a valid immigrant, you should be against illegal immigration because it hurts you just as much as the rest of us. But for her to steal, they tracked down. She stole one from some other person. Some of these things came straight out of cookbooks.
I just don't like. The other thing that I don't understand about this, and I didn't look at all her posts, but like, wouldn't the kitchen, the backdrop would be different each time? Like,
Well, you know the gas stove controversy, right? Like they're trying to make gas stoves illegal.
Yeah.
So she decided to capitalize on that with this beauty of a post.
Oh, I can't read
Yeah,
that.
that's
As
too
a
far away.
proud Latina who knows how to cook, homemade Mexican food tastes better from a gas stove.
Oh.
She didn't make that food.
The only food I've found that tastes significantly different from a gas stove is when you're making some kind of a meringue.
Marshmallows. Can't do a toasted marshmallow over an electric stove.
Should you be toasting marshmallows on gas?
Probably not, but I've done it. It's fine.
Well, moving over to the EU, they, surprise, surprise, are not happy about big tech mergers.
Microsoft's investment in OpenAI may face EU scrutiny, officials say. Here's your engagement challenge for the week. Find a better article that talks about Sam Altman's exit from OpenAI, because that's going to go down in like business textbooks as the most amazing business move Microsoft ever made for taking control of an organization, because they were about open source in the beginning, and so Microsoft was like, we're going to participate, as a partner 49%, but we're just going to give you money and opportunity. We're not going to interfere. And then they ejected Sam Altman, and then Microsoft was able to rehire him. And so from both sides of the equation, Microsoft has sort of hugged the OpenAI organization brilliantly. And this article doesn't do a thing to talk about that.
But I
Probably
think
on purpose, right?
But I think the EU people are talking about
Yes,
it.
exactly.
They understand
Yeah.
that.
That's why they're talking about it.
And and Microsoft also got a board member from that debacle and got rid of all the board members who didn't like them. So that was a bit of a coup. And the EU is
Some
saying,
Game of Thrones moment.
yeah, that's basically like, okay, so on paper, Microsoft is they're not a controlling member, but they do make money from this.
It could not have been a more Machiavellian operation, and I don't think Microsoft deliberately did this, but I think they took advantage of 3 or 4 missteps by the OpenAI organization, and it was just, OpenAI was playing checkers and Microsoft was playing chess, and it's going to go down in textbooks.
Now, if you are a Pennsylvanian and you think to yourself, Philadelphian, and you think to yourself,
Technically, both are true.
we feel bad because our lawmakers are now using AI and that's stupid and that's terrible. Well, at least you can feel better than these people.
Judges in England and Wales are given cautious approval to use AI in writing in legal opinions. You're still responsible for whatever it writes, but you can use it to help you. Fun times.
I don't know about that. We've already seen some real bad examples of people using AI in the courts. And India has certainly taken a stance in 2024, and that stance is they're saying no to crypto.
Apple pulls Binance, Kraken, and other crypto apps from the Indian App Store. We talked about this a little bit last week, but yeah, India is cracking down on any sort of cryptocurrency exchanges, everything.
And some people talk to the Indian leadership and they're like, hey, you get the Bitcoin ETF and all that stuff. Aren't you guys going to get on board? And they had an emphatic answer.
No is the answer. Is India done with crypto? We're done. SEC's landmark Bitcoin ETF approval surges prices. India's just like, nope.
That's a great pick.
Yeah. This is trash. Throwing it away. Sweeping it up.
I really feel like we could come up with some amazing Skyrim meme here, something about Khajiit having something if you have coin, but
Cow dung.
that's probably a little offensive. Probably not a good candidate for the title this week.
The truth is absolution. Well, over in China, if you recall back to that, the rosy times when all we had to worry about was Hong Kong being taken over by the mainland. That was our biggest concern, and then things got terrible. And Hong Kong
actually happened?
Was in fact taken over by the mainland. But one of the big ways that people fought back against that was they would airdrop things because it was anonymous and they weren't allowed to post certain things online. That appears to no longer be the case.
AirDrop, quote unquote, cracked by Chinese authorities to identify senders. So Apple, pretty immediately after the Hong Kong thing you were talking about, turned off anonymous. It has to be somebody in your contact list. So you can't airdrop something to somebody you don't know. And when you turn that feature on, it only stays on for 10 minutes because it's not your device. It doesn't belong to you. You have no preferences. It's Apple's preferences, not yours. And so now anything that you airdrop is also traceable back to your individual phone identifier, which has probably been that way for a while. So the crack here is probably feature.
The crack here is probably, we've been doing this for years, but now we want to prosecute somebody and we can't find any sort of parallel. So we're going to tell the world. And the world has also been told, we had this big question, how did Huawei sidestep all these sanctions? It was just like they danced around it like Michael Jackson. No one could figure out, how did these fabs make these chips? They should not have been able to cover that distance in that time. Well, they didn't.
Huawei, a teardown of the latest laptop shows a chip made in Taiwan, not China. Tech Insights has uncovered that Huawei's Kirin 9006C processor is actually made by TSMC. No!
And SIMC took credit for that, which was probably a lie. How smug is Taiwan right now?
They're probably just playing the game.
Or they're scared because it's like, oh, will we get in trouble for this? Like,
they're sitting in their bomb shelters, snickering away, stockpiling food.
I mean, it's an impossible situation for them. So, I mean.
And here's a great article that points out, I mean, at this point, if you think that anything isn't controlled in the media and managed on multiple levels, you need to give up that belief because it's absolutely untrue and there's so much evidence. Here's another data point for you.
Israeli group claims it's working with big tech insiders to censor inflammatory wartime content.
Inflammatory being anything pro-Palestinian or anything saying that, hey, a lot of civilians are dying. What's going on with that? And they point out there's a lot of great quotes in here and like literal smoking gun moments where big media corporations will run everything through Israel anytime they post a story about this, which is just incredible. If you're a reporter and you're reporting on this, everything you do has to be passed through the Israeli government, even if you're not in Israel. And moving on to Canada, we had a swath of Canadian stories this week. I don't know what's going on. None of them good. This one's just kind of insane. It's a judge who chose an arbitrary number. You think he used a random number generator?
Well, he didn't really. It was really more time-based than number-based.
The headline suggests.
Yeah.
Who could ever audit this?
No one. Well, they had to. It's property rights. It came down to property rights. So it's interesting because the property value's probably gone to zero, as old as the phones are. But we'll talk about it.
But what would? Okay, all right. Well, let's talk about that.
Read the headline.
Police must return phones after 175 million passcode guesses. The judge says this is in the Ottawa Citizen.
So here's what's going to happen. They're going to take a phone. They're going to plug it in. They're going to run 175 million guesses. It's going to fail. They're going to unplug that. They're going to throw away that piece of paper. They're They're going to plug it into another device. They're going to run, and when it hits, they're going to be like, yeah, this is the first one we did. We got lucky.
I think that the judge's reasoning here is pretty good, if non-technical. The police got a warrant, and the police, in order to move forward with the prosecution, they say they need the contents of the phone, and they're not willing to move forward with the prosecution without the contents of the phone. They've had the phones already for a year or two or some long period of time, and in that time, they've guessed 175 million guesses. And the judge, and they asked for an extension. They said, we need to keep these phones another 2 years to keep guessing. And the judge made them come up with, what are your odds of successfully cracking the phone in the next 6 months? It's like, are you going to have a breakthrough in the case with these in the next month, the next 6 months, the next year? And it was some absurdly large number, and 175 million was just a drop in the bucket. So the judge said, no, you need to return this property to the citizen. You need to follow other leads if you want to prosecute this person. It is still an open investigation, but you have to return their phone because you've had long enough and you haven't gotten anything. You need to return the phones.
Unfortunately, as is always the case with these, on the edge, is it overreach cases? It's about the worst possible thing. So a lot of people support it because who wants to support the worst possible thing?
Yeah.
But the Montreal Police are supporting another terrible thing, which makes no sense because
I have.
Oh, we're going to disagree on this one.
Montreal Police warns against defamation for posting videos of porch thieves online. On the surface, I think it should be okay to post videos of porch thieves online. The problem is actually...
You've suffered from that crime.
Yeah. The problem is actually Reddit. So people on Reddit will get a hold of that and be like, that's Barry from accounting. It was not actually Barry from accounting.
We did it, Reddit.
And then bad things happen to Barry from accounting.
But that's not me.
No, yeah.
I can't be responsible for what... You're going to make me responsible for Reddit? No. If this is my property and I'm filming my property and someone breaches my property...
If we as a society, and I'm basically... I'm fine with that. But I could see how there would be one scenario where it's like, oh, this mob mentality that we have to stop
the witch hunt.
Now, the police should definitely investigate Bob from accounting. But, just go talk to Bob. It's like, Bob, was this you? No. All right, cool. Moving right along.
This is just, it's empowering thieves and taking power away from homeowners. This is the opposite of modern society.
Yeah. If modern society would not react with the mob mentality, that would be ideal. And most
modern
of the time,
society, every society.
No matter what everybody else does, it does not impact my rights.
Yeah.
You're asking me to be responsible for the rest of the world.
I don't disagree. It's just that people are awful. People are awful at every level, and so it's just exhausting.
Which is why we should go back to allowing traps.
Yeah, that's the other contrast with here. Because, here, if somebody was on your porch and they didn't belong there, you probably could shoot them, and probably they would.
Not today.
You don't think so?
No. You would, because what'll happen is you'll get arrested and prosecuted even if you follow the letter of the law. Because it's all political now.
I think it depends on where you live.
Yeah, absolutely. But if you did that in California...
Well, yeah, I'm thinking some of the little towns we grew up in, I feel like people would kind of be like, well, they were stealing from you.
You'd still get your house searched. You'd still get arrested. You might get
you'd
away
still have
with
legal
it.
troubles.
Yeah,
but
it's going to be a huge problem. Someone committing a crime can ruin your life just because you're defending yourself and your property, which is not the way it should be. And the other things that should not be are these horrible security problems that we have. And this week, Linux got a couple of bad hits.
Linux devices are under attack by a never-before-seen worm, except we have seen it before. It's based on the Mirai malware, but that was a better headline, so they went with that. But it's just an evolution. It's a crypto miner. It's not. It may also be stealing data, but it's probably mostly a crypto miner.
Also, I think this was the one where as Mirai tries to hit telnet ports, because all those old devices have open telnet ports, this one has evolved into SSH.
Yeah.
And the supply chain continues to be a disaster.
3 malicious PyPy packages found targeting Linux with crypto miners.
What were they? No bulleted list. Come on, the Hacker News. Give us a bulleted list. Anyway, they said there was only like 400 installs since the time, so probably not super popular ones.
Yay, typos.
And if you run Ivanti,
I don't know.
Ashanti,
Endpoint protection.
the singer.
You are not protected.
Monty warns of critical vulnerability in its popular line of endpoint protection software. So it turns out this bypasses security, but also leaves the door open for other stuff to bypass security because it's endpoint protection. So, yeah, it's bad.
There's a
bad
patch.
architecture.
There's a patch. And the war, no, not that war. No, not the new war that just started this like yesterday. The old war that
There's so many
everybody's
wars.
the one that everybody's bored of already. We got some new hacking news coming out of that.
Reuters has the headline that we told you about on the first day that this happened. The Level 1 News told you this. Russian hackers were inside Ukrainian telecoms giant for months. Yes, that was obvious. When the thing started and the satellite terminals all went dead, even for U.S. customers and other European customers, they were so deep in the satellite telecommunications network that they tried to only disable the terminals that were geofenced in that area. And like you have to have the provider, the company that's providing that service, so thoroughly compromised that you know your way around their infrastructure to do that, that's really bad. And so this is the terrestrial and the other non-satellite providers there. And it's like, yes, they were all compromised.
And all that time, they weren't just like casually observing. They were more and more, and were infiltrating further into it. And by the end, they took everything. They just burned it to the ground. And it took them a very long time to get communications back up, which, if you recall, the headlines, they couldn't get their bomb warnings.
Yeah.
So that probably cost some lives. And don't put your kids on social media. Don't, use them as the face of your business. I mean, it worked for Dave Thomas, but you're not Dave Thomas. Don't put them out there. In a world where privacy is so valuable, just don't do it. And for the love of God, why would you do this?
Google Contractor pays parents $50 to scan their children's faces.
That sounds like, just when you put it out so plainly, it sounds so dystopian.
Well, how would you phrase that?
Yeah, I mean, that's what it is, but it's just like, oh.
It's weird because it's not Google, but it's also
It's one of their contractors, yeah.
But it's just
Tell us.
That's probably on purpose, so that way when they inevitably get in trouble for giving parents $50 to scan their kids' faces, they can be like, well, that was our contractor, that wasn't us.
So they're trying to improve their facial recognition models, but it's kind of spicy now. Like, where do you get your data from? Because if you pull it from social media, people are going to sue you and get upset. So let's just pay bad parents
$50.
They also you had to do.
Get you a carton of Marlboro Reds.
Is that really what they cost right now?
I don't know. Back when I worked in a liquor store, a carton was like $25, but that was 10 years ago.
I bet they are 50.
Yeah.
Not only do you have to do like just pictures of your kids' faces, but you got to put them in the props. You got to put like hats and glasses and stuff on them, I guess, so that it can try to still identify faces and be trained.
Ugh.
Yeah.
It's weird that there's not already a lot of that kind of data on the internet. It's almost like we know better as a species than to do that. We have some instinct not to do that.
But also, how crazy is it? We're the richest country in the world. We pay our leaders an insane amount of money, even though they complain about it. But leaders in India and Africa, when WorldCoin came around, they were like, "Hang on,
whoa! You're scanning people's retinas?
Serious?
Yeah.
No." And our leaders are like, "Nah, this is fine."
How much will you pay me to do that? Say that's okay?
It's Google, not China. That's fine.
And here's a flashback, a security flashback, where we have learned
Stuxnet.
amazing new details about an old story that was really interesting.
Dutch engineer used water pump to get $1 billion Stuxnet malware into Iranian nuclear facility, according to this report. This report is really interesting, and I have a feeling it's going to give us lots of news nuggets for a long time. But the first thing that popped into my head when I was looking at this was, I really hope that Dutch engineer is safe. And it turns out that he is safe because he died 2 weeks after this.
Yeah, I think he was a loose end.
Yeah.
I think Mossad was like, okay, we're in. We don't want him talking to anybody.
Yeah, so he had a motorcycle accident. I am 100% sure that is not a coincidence.
There might have been a Stuxnet in his motorcycle chain.
Yeah.
But it's wild. They found him because he was working in Iran and he had access to these places. And they were like, hey, you're an engineer. We're going to give you this special pump and you're going to go install it. And
This malware was so good. They kind of knew it was there before it had spread, but the Iranians apparently thought some of their nuclear engineers had turned, and so they were tortured to death. But they got the wrong guy at least twice.
The other amazing tidbit here is that they believe, based on these new things that they've learned, that this whole project cost $2 billion.
It was effective.
It slowed them down, I guess.
It was not as effective as they had planned, which is also eye-opening.
It's like, hey, we could slow down Iran's nuclear enrichment by 5 years. All we got to do is spend $2 billion and kill an innocent man.
Just
so
one.
Easy.
I mean, technically more.
Well, Iran killed the other
did that.
guys,
Yeah.
but you could place the blame on the intelligence agencies, I guess.
Dark.
Ugh.
What an amazing story to end on. That's why you should share links with friends.
Happy
with your friends.
Tuesday.
We might try listing the show once a week, like maybe the Friday episode as you get a notify. I don't know. We'll see. We're messing with the algorithm. We'll see.
Yeah. Which
I think we're the ones being messed with.
yeah, I think no matter what we do, YouTube will find a way to punish us. So might as well mess around with it.
Fun times.
Anyway, we'll see you guys in the next one.
Thank you for watching all the way through.